harm's way and to care for them and their families when they return home. That's CBS's Allison Keyes. Washington U.S. Senator Patty Murray, who serves on the Committee on Veterans Affairs, with a similar message.
As a nation, we make a promise to take care of our veterans. And on Veterans Day, while we cheer the courage and sacrifice of our veterans, we also pause to remember and rededicate ourselves to that solemn commitment.
According to government statistics, Washington State is home to more than 500,000 veterans and thousands of active duty military. The closing bell report, restaurants and businesses are saluting veterans and active duty military with some freebies today. Target is offering 10% discounts to anyone who shows military ID or dresses in uniform. Starbucks is giving out free tall hot brew coffee for service members and their spouses. Red Lobster will throw in a free appetizer or dessert. Outback offers free bloomin' onions and Coke. Little Caesars, a free lunch combo. Top it all off with a free donut and a small coffee at Krispy Kreme, or just a donut at Dunkin'. Cracker Barrel is giving away free slices of double chocolate fudge Coca-Cola cake. Deborah Rodriguez, CBS News. On Wall Street, the Dow ended down 23 points, but the NASDAQ was up 232. Let's go to Cairo Radio Real-Time Traffic. Here's Chris Wojcik.
On the east side, southbound 405, and I see more, thickening up in the drive on southbound 405 there from I-90 down to 44th, but northbound we have a problem just on the other side there with a disabled vehicle. It's partially blocking the right lane, so we're kind of seeing it back up now from prior to 30th on up to it. Your drive between Bellevue and Renton or the other way around. It's going to be about 15 minutes, so plan ahead for that. In Puyallup, westbound 512 and Pioneer just off the Valley Freeway, we have a disabled vehicle taking up the left lane. That's got you backed up to the Valley Freeway. Northbound 5 still a little bit slow for coming. The rest of our freeways look pretty good. Our mountain passes right now, fairly manageable. Traction tires are advised over Stevens and White Pass. No restrictions over Snoqualmie. Cairo Radio Real-Time Traffic. I'm Chris Wojcik.
Your Cairo Radio forecast calls for partly cloudy skies today with highs in the mid-40s. Lows tonight in the upper 30s. Tomorrow rain with highs in the mid-40s. It's 45 in downtown Seattle. I'm Kim Bosch.
For election coverage, COVID updates, local news, and opinion, download the Cairo Radio app. Cairo Radio, here for what's next.
Uh-oh, guess what day it is? Guess what day it is? Huh? Anybody? Mike. What day is it, Mike? Listen, guess what today is?
It's Hump Day with you.
Ready, check. Round 24, Razor.
Brought to you by IRG Physical and Hand Therapy on Cairo Radio 97.3 FM with a 12s. You're the Hawks.
Playmaker, Danny Russell lets it go. Down the far sideline. Reaching up, making a catch. Touchdown, Seahawks!
Here's Dory Munson.
And here is Rod Stewart for his weekly visit. Man, it was fun watching you calling the Seahawk game on Sunday. You had a great weekend, man.
That was pretty cool, I'm not going to lie. Yeah, you and I are trying to do a little FaceTime here. I think we better turn this off, Dory.
Yeah, we got too much of a delay.
Yeah, that's too much of a delay, too much echo. We're not tech savvy enough to do that. Gosh, but it was great to see your smiling face right there on FaceTime. I did. I got a chance to do my first ever Seahawk game as far as a national, regular season broadcast. Did all the fun preseason there with Kurt. But yeah, that was what a game to do, wasn't it? I've been to you about the games.
Because I was listening to South Newport, and I saw you doing the college game at Indiana. And I texted you and just asked what NFL game do you have tomorrow? Because I really did not know you were doing the Seahawk game. And when you told me that was with Nicole on the show yesterday, and you and I talked about it a few weeks ago. We don't have to get into it too much, but once again, I'm just broadcasting. You never said no to anything. There was no job that was too small, and you know, it's that old thing. You got to put in the 10,000 hours. Anything, and you paid your dues, man. Now, how many people are doing college? This is a exceptional weekend. I don't know if this is going to happen often for you, but doing a college game, national on Saturday, and an NFL game on Sunday. Are there very many people who are doing?
No, and I don't think I would not recommend it to do it every weekend. It was actually because of COVID tests on some of the other college colleges. Nobody said we just lost the tests and they had to move things around. So yeah, I did a couple of college games the last couple of weekends, but I think it'll be kind of just for the NFL side. And along those lines, Lori, I appreciate that. And yes, it was fun doing the phone zone. It was fun writing for the Charlotte Herald, Tacoma News Tribune. It was fun doing pre and post radio. Fun doing, just everything. Just kind of, as you said, saying yes to everything. Today is a special day in Arlington too, because my oldest Haley signed her national letter of intent, and the school she was at had a really neat ceremony today, celebrating all the girls, young women at that school, and then their boys came afterwards, that had all signed to play basketball, volleyball, swimming, track. And you know what? The exact same thought as I was sitting in the auditorium came to my mind of, man, think of how many 10,000 hours these young women have made of sacrifice to pursue their dreams, right? The lacrosse, the swimmer, the soccer player, the cross country at Baylor, the 4 basketball girls who go on to play in college off this team, and just the tens of thousands of hours of sacrifice on that stage brought a little tear to my eye, and just kind of a reminder that that hard work and sacrifice can truly pay dividends.
In case people don't know, why don't you just remind everybody where Haley's going to be playing her college ball?
She is going to be Grizzly, the University of Montana. So she's going to go to Missoula, and it was pretty neat, Dory, walking through the whole recruiting thing and push came to shove. And I think I've told you this off the air, but we had a good, just adult conversation because it was down to a couple schools, and it was a really hard choice. And ultimately, she said, I just love the atmosphere at Montana. I love that sports matters. I love that the campus is alive with sports and football and that stadium. And at first I was like, yeah, but it's just sports. It's more than, there's a lot more to college than sports, right? But she's right. She's like, that's been my life experience, because sports is community, sports is bonding, sports brings people together, sports is, it just brings we talk about this a lot, you and I, over the last few years, of moments that we've shared in sports together and what that can do. So in the end, that was, I think, the biggest factor to push her to ultimately make the decision, and couldn't be more excited.
The other thing that's really cool, and for everyone who's listening who has a kid that maybe hasn't hit junior year in high school yet, maybe they're a little younger, you haven't yet done any college visits. The tradition that we kind of started in our family was daddy-daughter college visits. Just a way for me, one-on-one with each of my 3 girls. And my oldest and I, we went to the LA area. We went to Pepperdine and UCLA and schools all around LA. My middle daughter and I, we went to, where did she not go?
Went up and down the Ivy. Yes. And your last one, you went to Pullman, and that was it. Period. End of story.
No, the last one, we went to Arizona. We looked at Arizona State. But what we discovered, and we went to the Midwest. We went to Notre Dame, Northwestern. You walk on a campus, and not just the parents, but the kid almost has an intuitive feel within minutes of whether it's a good fit or not, and it's really beautiful. I mean, just the kind of there's something about these college visits where people get to read really quick, and when it's a class you read, it's very exciting.
Well, I don't know anything about that. And just the environment, especially probably in some of your years, it's been so budget cuts and shortfalls and decisions they're going to have to make on those, but you're absolutely right. It was, when we went there in March, April, it was, she was just beaming. We could just tell, man, this place is cool. There's a hike to an M up there, and then you could just feel, it was stuff, but you could feel some of that unique energy, and I think that once again, Dory's spot on.
Okay, before I let you go, I'm guessing you didn't do real well. I just took $5 off of Shop's I was playing a song, and we were guessing what year it came out when Sean thought, I'm going to tell you what we guessed. I'm guessing you'll get it within 1 year because this game got smack dab in the middle of important time in your life. So what year did this song come out? The ball all around Huskies.
That's what I had, 98, 97, 98.
1997. I would have thought this would have been the song you'd listen to in the lobby room. When everybody else was listening to, the heavy metal and everything. Okay, good. I'm guessing that this would have been your pregame, get me fired up music.
No, but along those lines, Josh Allen of the Buffalo Bills told us he loves Sinatra and Elvis in his headsets before he went out and torched the Seahawks. So you never know. Quarterbacks are a little bit goofy, but
Predictions, I think, if the economy could shrink significantly. The country is facing a dilemma many others are confronting. How do you live with the virus? Virginia Vidinopoulos, this report.
There's so many things that remind us that this is a wedding in a time of coronavirus. The fact that staff and guests are all wearing masks. The fact that guests are seated in socially distant family groups. But there's one thing that sticks out like a sore thumb, and that's the guest list here. Numbers for these celebrations can run into the thousands, but right now, rules in Delhi only allow for up to 200 guests. India's big fat wedding has been slimmed down.
You have to sanitize your hands with a napkin, you have to put a mask up there.
Mark Krishnan Singh is a wedding designer who helped organise this lavish occasion. As the evening progresses, the dancing begins. As people embrace and hug freely, it feels like we've gone back in time. But the city's wealthy are still finding ways to celebrate safely, as Mark Krishnan explains.
All the guests and all the people who are working for us, they all have a COVID test before they come into the hotel. They were tested negative, so they are easily hugging each other, they are getting close to each other.
Why are weddings so important to Indians?
Weddings are basically like a festival. It's like a dream come true.
It's quite a contrast to the empty scenes during lockdown, as the concept of social distancing becomes a distant memory. And this, many say, has contributed to a sharp rise in coronavirus cases in India's capital. I'm here at Dilli Haat. It's one of the Indian capital's best-known markets. Artisans from every corner of this culturally diverse country come here to sell their wares. Even here, more distanced and quieter, shoppers feel it's important to get out and about.
Staying at home is quite frustrating, and coming out after a long time has been a great experience.
It's very cloudy outside, so we are also a little tensed whether to go or not. But it's okay, we should have fun. It's a festival.
With cases rising, do you think there should be a lockdown?
No, there should not be a lockdown anymore now, because the number of recoveries are also getting increased. People are already tired of sitting at the home. This is the time when we can step out.
The shoppers aren't stepping out like they usually do, and for vendors, it's a struggle. I'm drawn to a stall selling hand-carved Rajasthani puppets, made by a woman named Vasanti. I watch as she carefully ties colourful silk cloth onto the smiling wooden dolls. As she dresses her creations, she tells me she can't afford to buy new clothes for herself. For 4 days, she didn't make a sale. For 4 days, she had no money to eat. For us poor people, there is no Diwali, she tells me. We've gone bankrupt. We've been suffering for the last 8 months. There's no safety net for millions of the nation's poor. And that's where the government has, so far, decided against bringing in a second lockdown. But balancing hardship with health comes at a cost.
Today, if somebody was to come for admission to ICU, I'm afraid there will be a lot of difficulty in admitting him.
Dr. Arvind Kumar works at Delhi's Gangaram Hospital. He's deeply concerned about the rapid rise of COVID cases in Delhi. Across the city, ICU beds are fast running out, with pollution-related illnesses also fueling the demand.
I am extremely worried right now because from 5 o'clock in the morning, my phone starts ringing, requests from friends, relatives for getting ICU beds, and if the numbers increase substantially, I shudder to think what will happen.
With Diwali around the corner, the city's temples are set to get even busier. Some, like the ISKCON temple, have extra measures in place, including the unusual sight of security guards breaking up groups of worshippers who aren't socially distancing. For many, faith is the only way to get through these times.
I don't feel scared because my Lord will take care of everything. Yes, it is crowded, but people are following the social distancing.
I got COVID and I prayed to recover. And I'm here to offer my prayers now. I'm not scared at all. There can't be fear at the altar of God.
Doctors fear the Indian capital is heading towards a medical emergency and warn that if people aren't vigilant this festival season, any celebrations could be short-lived.
That was Rajini Vaidyanathan reporting from Delhi. This is NewsHour from the BBC. Distribution of the BBC NewsHour in the U.S. is supported by the United States Postal Service, offering postage stamps for purchase at more than 40,000 supermarkets, drugstores, office suppliers, and wholesale clubs. And C3.ai. C3.ai software enables organizations to use artificial intelligence at enterprise scale, solving previously unsolvable business problems. Learn more at C3.ai.
Remember those Paycheck Protection Program loans that a lot of businesses were getting earlier this year?
It would have been very difficult to get where we're at right now without that little influx of capital.
The PPP loan was something that gave us a runway, but it didn't solve the problem.
I'm Kai Rizdal, where businesses that got PPP loans are at right now. That is next time on Marketplace. At 2:30 and 6:30 p.m. on KUOW 94.9 and KUOW.org.
Reminder of our top story this hour. A record number of Americans are in hospital receiving treatment for COVID-19. Figures for Tuesday showed that almost 61,000 hospital beds were needed across the country, as doctors warn that facilities could soon become overwhelmed. Deborah Berger is president of the U.S. Nurses Association, National Nurses United.
Nurses across the nation consistently are still reporting unsafe working conditions, including the lack of optimal PPE. We still continue to be told that it's a crisis and we have to suck it up.
One other headline story we've been looking at, the authorities in Tigray in northern Ethiopia have called on the population to mobilize against what they describe as federal government aggression. Hundreds of fighters have been killed during a week of fighting, and thousands of civilians have fled to Sudan. This is the BBC World Service, and live from London NewsHour with me, Tim Franks. In the Armenian capital, Yerevan, thousands have rallied against the peace deal agreed with Azerbaijan to end 6 weeks of fighting over Nagorno-Karabakh. The protesters called for the resignation of the Prime Minister, Nikol Pashinyan. For his part, Mr. Pashinyan has conceded that the accord brokered by Russia is painful, But this country had no choice after Azerbaijani forces had made significant territorial gains in the enclave, which is under Armenian control but lies within Azerbaijan. Our correspondent Jonah Fisher is in Yerevan.
Look, these demonstrations were fairly significant in size, I would say between 3,000 to 5,000 people. They took place this afternoon going to a key square outside the Prime Minister's office and then outside Parliament. And, well, the repeated chant that we kept on hearing was Niko Dabajan, which means Nikol, traitor. Nikol Pashinyan is the Prime Minister of Armenia, and among the demonstrators who were taking part today, there was a very strong sense that he had betrayed Armenia by signing this peace agreement with Azerbaijan and with Russia. I think it should be said that while these people were obviously very upset, it didn't today feel like the start of some sort of street revolution against the Prime Minister. But for now, at least at this point, there are some very angry, some unhappy people, but there is also, I think, in a broader sense among people here in Armenia, an acceptance, an acknowledgement that while the Prime Minister was put in a very, very difficult position following military defeats in Nagorno-Karabakh, he really had very little choice but to agree to these terms. The Prime Minister has been very clear over the last few days that if he hadn't agreed to these very painful terms, that it could have been much worse.
Do you get a sense from those who are even willing to accept grudgingly a peace deal had to be struck? Do you get a sense that people are feeling that this peace deal will be sustainable?
I think there is a sense that Armenia can't really challenge this at this point in time, that they've spent 6 weeks fighting against what is effectively being Azerbaijan, backed by Turkey, and they have to a large extent been on their own. They've found themselves at a constant disadvantage on the battlefield. The sophistication of the Azerbaijani military equipment, in particular the drones they've been using, has meant that they've taken pretty heavy losses and they've consistently lost territory. So I think there is an acceptance that things had become very, very difficult. I think there is a discussion here about whether Armenia could have done more to protect itself in advance, whether it should have been better prepared for this moment. But I think there is a wider sense that Armenia has had a very difficult 6 weeks in this conflict, in the loss of all this territory in and around Nagorno-Karabakh, and really the idea of some sort of revolution, some sort of change of leadership and going back to war immediately just isn't really feasible given the broader geopolitical situation. And while we did have earlier ceasefires, this feels very different. Already we've got the Russian peacekeepers going in to maintain some of the corridor into this enclave. So it is already being implemented on the ground, and it is very different to what we've seen before. So I think that the thinking, broadly speaking, is that this is going to endure for a period of time at least.
Jonah Fisher in Yerevan. In the Nagorno-Karabakh War of the late 80s and 90s, large numbers of Azerbaijanis were expelled from fled areas either in the enclave or close by. And in the most recent fighting, tens of thousands of ethnic Armenians left Nagorno-Karabakh itself to seek sanctuary inside Armenia. So what can we expect now in terms of movement of people? Lawrence Brewers is Corpus's Programme Director at the NGO Conciliation Resources.
What I would expect to see is a big effort to return many of the hundreds of thousands of Azerbaijanis who were displaced in the 1990s from the occupied territories. So these 7 districts that surround Nagorno-Karabakh and which were almost exclusively populated by ethnic Azerbaijanis prior to the conflict. The key issues in these areas are more about rehabilitation of settlements that have essentially been derelict for 30 years. There haven't been that many settlers in these areas, around about 17,000 people, many of whom have already now been displaced. So that's a kind of one issue associated with that. You read in the news that this settlement has been recaptured. There's no settlement there. There's only ruins. And so there's going to be, I think, a very big effort required to develop these areas. So I think that would be the main movement. It remains to be seen how many people actually want to move into these areas. It would mean moving into an area that's on the border of a conflict zone, a previous conflict zone, and a conflict that might erupt again in the future. And so what we might see is some families kind of moving back, but others perhaps rehabilitating an ancestral claim to a home and perhaps spending summers there and then, seeing how things pan out. Then you've got the issue of Azerbaijanis returning to Nagorno-Karabakh proper. So one of the outcomes of the recent war is that Azerbaijan has recaptured a very important, symbolically speaking and strategically speaking city, Shusha, which is seen as the cradle of Azerbaijani culture. And this will be a very important political agenda as well to ensure the resettlement of this city by Azerbaijanis. The flip side of all of this is that you have displaced Armenians. Upwards of 100,000 Karabakh Armenians have been displaced from Nagorno-Karabakh. This area, a truncated Nagorno-Karabakh, is going to continue to exist, patrolled by Russian peacekeepers. And I think one of the questions that's harder to answer is the extent to which Karabakh Armenians will return to this territory, which is much truncated compared to what it was before the war, and will be very much a securitized space patrolled by Russian peacekeepers.
Do you see this current accord as something that can hold and can perhaps lead to a full resolution of the conflict?
I see this accord as ending a very bloody and devastating war, but it does not solve the conflict. It's actually just 9 bullet points. And what it does is introduce a security architecture, bringing the current conflict to an end. And it also stipulates these infrastructure measures, opening up communications, opening up transport routes. But there is nothing in the agreement on the politics of the conflict. The other thing about this agreement is that it's stipulated for a 5-year period, and it will roll over for another 5 years unless one of the parties withdraws their consent. After this latest round of violence, we have once again 2 very polarized societies not really ready to embrace a different kind of politics and relationship with each other.
Lawrence Bruce, Caucasus Program Director at Conciliation Resources. That's it from this edition of News Hour from me, Tim Franks, and the rest of the team here in London. Thanks very much for listening.
It's 1:59. Stay tuned for the Daily Marketplace and All Things Considered on 94.9 KUOW-FM Seattle, KUOW Tumwater, KQOW Bellingham.
Support for KUOW comes from Comcast. Over the last decade, Comcast has connected 4 million students from low-income homes to high-speed Xfinity Internet. Now they're creating lift zones, providing Wi-Fi to 1,000 community centers to turn them into safer places to study. Learn more at xfinity.com/education.
Hi, I'm Mara Eliason, National Political Correspondent for NPR. Join me for KUOW's next Inside 2020 virtual event as we explore local and national politics and the top issues Thursday, November 12th at 4 p.m. live on KUOW's YouTube and Facebook. RSVP and find out more about this series at KUOW.org/events.
Inside 2020 is sponsored by PIMCO Insurance.
For Democrats, it's a really high-stakes situation right now. They thought they had a crack at taking the Senate. They still might actually have that ability, and with it, the ability to actually allow Joe Biden to have a working majority that would let him get his agenda through, that would let him have the cabinet that he wants.
I'm Michael Barbaro. That's Today on the Daily from the New York Times.
The Daily is supported by Progressive Insurance, offering a way to buy home insurance with their Home Quote Explorer tool. Custom quotes and rates are available online. Learn more at Progressive.com or 1-800-PROGRESSIVE. Now that's Progressive. And by Bal.